the Secret Service personnel is no different than what I expect out of my delegation that's sitting here. We're representing the people of the United States.
Did the White House counsel check the hotel records down in Columbia to see if any White House advance or White House staff had
I'm not going to get into the specifics. I would simply say that the review that the White House counsel oversaw and led produced no indication of any misconduct.
Remember, nearly 24 people were fired and reprimanded in the Secret Service and the military. What happened to this guy? He actually has been hired by the State Department to work in the Office of Global Women's Issues.
Well, this got a lot of attention here in Washington today. The Washington Post with a very long, detailed piece about a White House volunteer, an advance team member who they say they have evidence that he had a prostitute in his room in Columbia. You may remember the Secret Service in Cartagena for this. The White House advance team member, Jonathan Dack, his attorney, his lawyer says this: the Post bases its allegations almost exclusively on a hotel log with the name of a prostitute and a room number, yet neither Jonathan Dack's name nor his signature appears on the hotel log or any piece of paper with a foreign national. Needless to say, it's just an interesting story here. Let's bring in our panel. Judge Andrew Napolitano, Fox News senior judicial analyst, Ron Fournier, senior political columnist of the National Journal, and Jonah Goldberg, at-large editor of National Review Online. Ron, you wrote a column on this today. Why, for somebody sitting at home, is this important?
It's a good question. I started that column by saying I don't have a strong opinion on Colombian hookers. because
Which is always a good line when you're doing a column.
I'm going to start every column like that the rest of the year. I did that because, the incident itself, although it's, a lot of us would find it reprehensible, it really isn't a major news story. This wouldn't have been a big deal, except for a couple problems. One, the White House lied to the American public. Jay Carney said when this happened that there was no specific and credible evidence that anybody from the White House was involved. Well, at the very least, there was specific and credible evidence, and they were told about it. And they covered it up, and the cover-up was always worse than the crime, because once you lose that bond of credibility and trust with the public, you're not leading anymore. Secondly, there's a fairness issue here. 10 Secret Service officers, not forgiving what they did in Cartagena, but these men were putting their life at risk, willing to take a bullet for the president, middle-class men doing a tough job, and based on the same set of evidence, they were fired. And this guy, who's a young man who works for a prominent Democrat, a wealthy donor, a Yale law student, wasn't punished. His father, I'm sorry. Wasn't punished, and now he's got himself a nice promotion, a full-time job. There's just a level of double standard here that's just not appropriate.
Yeah, and remember back then, obviously the biggest scandal was that foreign nationals in contact with any advance team member of the Secret Service, it potentially provides a security issue for the president.
I agree with Ron about the political problem. The president's credibility is so low, it's hard to believe it's going to get any lower, but this may do it. But I see a serious legal issue here. Here's the legal issue. The government is permitted legally to lie to us. Jay Carney, Josh Earnest, whoever's speaking for the president, may lawfully lie. We, of course, can be prosecuted if we lie to the government. But the government can't lawfully lie to itself. So if somebody from the administration lied in an official inquiry to an investigator from the Congress, and we know there was an official inquiry, that is a felony. So the cover-up to the Congress, Congressman Chaffetz is right to be upset. They were lied to, and somebody can be prosecuted for that.
You have a legal question from Tweet the Panel. Obi Paya, writes, can Congress request the documents from the White House counsel's investigation, or is it protected by executive privilege?
It is not protected by executive privilege because it does not go to the executive deliberative process. It does not go to diplomatic secrets, military secrets, or national security secrets. They can't get the president's advance plans, but they can get where he had been and who was with him and who was supposed to be with him.
And the White House stupidly exacerbated the problem today by coming out and saying from the podium that Carol Leonnig, who's been doing this great investigative work, that this was old news. This was an old story. Well, it wasn't old news. That is a lie. And you're not only have you ticked off the Secret Service, but now you ticked off the Washington Post.
Above the fold.
Not very smart.
Right. And a big piece. Jonah.
No, it's no problem. 2 points. My column tomorrow is on this, and I agree entirely that Cartagena hooker may be the most euphonious phrase in American politics, and I want to keep it around as long as I can.
It's a good phrase.
But beyond Cartagena hooker, I said it again, there's another issue here, right, I agree with my esteemed colleagues here that the underlying scandal, prostitution in Cartagena is legal. He wasn't part of the Secret Service. this would have been an embarrassing thing for this young man if he got called out on it, but it would not have doomed President Obama's re-election chances. But if they were willing to lie and cover up and obfuscate and falsify records on something this minor, it does call into question what they would be willing to lie and obfuscate and cover up on something that really did have a big impact, namely things like Benghazi. And you can play the Jay Carney sound bites of him saying there's no evidence, this is nonsense, right alongside the almost exact same language of him saying the same thing about the talking points on Benghazi, which just this week we heard from Leon Panetta say basically they were bogus. And it does sort of give you a glimpse inside this White House and how everything was incredibly politicized and remains incredibly politicized.
You know, they also said today that there was a bipartisan Senate investigation. That investigation actually focused on the Inspector General, who ended up leaving his job based on this investigation.
Well, one wonders why he left his job. Was he ordered to be silent? Did he know he was being frustrated? Was he aware of the lying? Did he participate in the lying? Somebody lied to somebody in a criminal way. That's pretty clear.
Well, the Post story quotes an investigator as part of that investigation, is saying that they had pressure to cover this up.
3 people were put on administrative leave because they objected to the final report.
The White House was afraid of being embarrassed.
Does this bubble up beyond the Washington kind of circle of interesting story? I mean, does it translate to people who are already kind of questioning this administration?
Well, first of all, if you can get the phrase Cartagena-Hooker in there, maybe. But second of all, I think insofar as it's a glimpse inside of this sort of politicized, control-freak White House. And also, it's never good to really tick off the White House press corps, which they managed to have finally done.
And also, Kathleen Rummüller possibly being talked about as Attorney
I can't
General.
imagine she's still on that list.
No.
No way would the president expose her to the type of cross-examination she would receive before even Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee.
You agree?
No way.
Agreed.
Agreement. Next up, the president's